Okay, good morning. Great to hear the happy chatter. We are ready to roll. Good to see a good group here. I'd like to begin by expressing some gratitude to Chef Jen and her team and also the group at Clemens. Phenomenal Hatfield breakfast, thank you. And I'd also like to introduce my team who are here this morning. Jen, to my right, you've been getting lots of good emails from Jen. She does a lot of coordinating of this event along with Anna, who you probably met downstairs, and Brenda. And then our advisory team members who are here. Henry, if you could all stand. Henry's our founder as well. Matt, you can hold the applause. Henry, Matt Sullivan is over here. Dave Griffith, our newest team member, we've known for many, many years. And Joy, where are you? Joy and Ron Wers. Where's Ron? In the back. All right. So thank you guys for being here. I'm remembering 32 years ago when we had our first forum in 1992, just across the way here at Alderfer Auction Center. They hosted us, and now 32 years we are still a vibrant learning community offering lots of interesting forums. So I'm going to pass it to Jen.
So I want to give a shout out to the members of our advisory network. So we select these people very carefully for their competence and collaborative spirit. While we're a full service family business advisory firm, we know it takes a village to support family businesses. So our advisory networks are represented here on the screen with their logos. And if you're here and you don't mind standing and giving a wave, that would be great.
Thank you, guys.
That was a half stand. So they are here to support your learning and flourishing as well.
And we have a number of guests here. Two of them are not here yet. They're coming from a little distance. But we have Sherry Russell from Alderfer Auction Center. She's the CEO over there. Sherry, if you can wave over here in the back. And then we have Deborah Goolsby, CEO over at Superweb Design in Quakertown. Welcome, Deb. We also have Blake Craft coming from Craft Busing and Richard Wolfington from Wolfington Body Shop. So, a brief word about our theme for the year. Our theme is honoring the many voices of enterprising families. And as you know, there are many voices in the family business system. So learning how to navigate the voices, listening in different scenarios, takes processes and systems and, frankly, skill. Our theme book this year is the Harvard Business Review Family Business Handbook. If you're a member, you would have already received that. We find it a powerful book. We use it in our peer groups and in our consulting engagements. One of the things we really like about the book is that it focuses on the importance and the role of ownership. Now, they talk about the 4 rooms, we talk about the 5 mountains, so there's a lot of congruence there. So we encourage you to share what you're learning with your families as well. So we're going to be hearing about a lot of the complexity of 2 different families today and their governance, but kind of where does the complexity start? Now, in '78, 2 researchers discovered that there are actually 3 very different systems that overlap. And many of you are in all 3 of those roles, or perhaps will be. So there's different roles, goals, in each of these in the business, ownership, and family. So there's built-in conflict because of that. Just let that sink in again. I know a lot of you are living in that. So our model is the 5 mountain model, which a lot of you have seen. And it's the framework for our consulting, and it also gives a common language. We've added the board mountain and the advisor mountain. We think they're very important to the whole family business system. So just a word. We intentionally have the family at the bottom because we believe that the family is the strength of the business. That's the core. That's where the values come from. It's often the farm team for shareholders and other mountains. And, you know, families, I think, are forever. We forgive, we love, we accept. Everyone's welcome. It's an emotional system. That's very different than business. Business is about performance. That's why we colored that one blue. It's about performance, and there's often hierarchy in a family. Typically, we get to peer-to-peer relationships At least I am getting there with my family. They're older children. But in business, there's often hierarchy, and it's right people, right seats, which is different than ownership, the gold mountain. There, it's really important for owners, shareholders, to speak with one voice. And when we get to sophistication and more complexity, depending what the vision is, it's sometimes more important to bring in an outside board, independent directors, and we'll be hearing some of that today. So we are part of the advisor mountain, as are some other advisors here, and part of our role is to help families set up the architecture here, or the governance system, as we like to say, and help build the capacity in the different mountains and have the really critical, crucial conversations that need to happen. So now you have a framework as well for our conversations. You may wonder why we have mountains. We have mountains because, if you've climbed mountains, mountain climbing can be an exhilarating journey, right? Getting towards the summit. But sometimes we get lost and you can fall off. Sometimes it's 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. But one of our mantras is progress, not perfection.
So just a word about how our time together will flow this morning. Per the agenda at your table, we'll start by hearing from Dale, and then we'll hear from Brad, and then we'll have some questions after each of them share. And I have extra agendas. If you don't have one, feel free. I'll raise your hand and I'll come give you one. After they share, we'll take a 20-minute break, and the restrooms are out the door and to the left. And please feel free as we go through this morning to get up, get some food, refill your coffee, get some juice. And then after we return from the break, we'll have time for additional questions before we continue forward with the program. And then if you missed the tour, you can do that at 10:30 when we're finished, and that's a self-guided, so feel free to go in there and check it out.
So I would like to invite Brad Clemens and Dale High to come up on the platform here. And I'd like to note that we have 2 exceptional family leaders here who are leading multi-gen enterprises and who are really servant leaders, as I know them. And they're different, different families, different ages, different industries, but you'll also hear some similarities. So we could talk a lot with these guys today, but today we're going to focus on creative governance. So can I close the door?
Sure.
Here, is that all right? It was making a hum. So I'd like to begin with Dale. And I first met Dale about 25 years ago. Dale invited Henry and me to the High Center at Elizabethtown, and we had some good conversations there. And then a few years after that, we invited Dale and his wife Sadie to present at our forum in 2023. So Dale, thank you for being here. Really appreciate your time this morning.
Well, it's good to be here, Sally. Thank you for inviting me. Happy to be with you. And Brad, thanks for hosting us in this wonderful facility. I haven't been here in years. I've totally lost. And the progress has been amazing. So congratulations, and happy to have a chance to share thoughts with you.
Same.
So I'm really impressed with Dale's generous spirit, his entrepreneurial thinking, and his execution. So this started at a young age. So Dale, I understand that your father started high welding, and from our earlier conversations, I learned your entrepreneurial and expansive vision kicked in at a rather young age. So could you tell us when you started working in the business and how that went?
Well, actually, I was about 13, and I remember that I was painting bridge railings. I don't know if you remember the old style bridge railings that had the twisted pickets, and so I would dip my wool mitt in red lead paint and paint these twisted pickets with the lead paint running up my arms, which may explain a lot about my limitations today, I'm not sure. And then I remember when I was in high school, because I was always focused in wanting to be in the family business and believing it could be more than it was. So I would ride my bicycle from Strasburg to Lancaster to the plant every evening after high school, which was a 7-mile ride, and not all uphill, but there were hills. And then I would work for a few hours, and my dad would pop the bike in the back of his car and drive me home. So Saturdays, of course, were half days of working in the plant, so it had an early start. I remember at 17, I was frustrated because I didn't see the company going anywhere. I said, this has to grow, it's going to support our families. So I went to my dad and I said, we got to grow this company. He says, well, I don't have capital to expand the plant. I can't buy new equipment, so we're kind of in the place where we need to be right now. I said, no, we need to grow. He says, well, I said, look, we can do a second shift. He says, well, that would never work here. I said, well, it works other places. Why wouldn't it work here? And I bugged him enough till at 17 I didn't give up. He said, well, do you want to do it? I said, well, sure. And 17, you can do anything, right? So I hired a dozen people, put them on a second shift, and we proceeded to mess up everything that the first shift did. They were so angry. We'd come in, they'd turn their backs, they'd lock up their toolboxes and just hope we'd go away. So I saw that wasn't working real well, so I went to the first shift supervision. I said, look, we have to grow this company. This is an opportunity. We did now sell enough to help us grow, but we have to make this second shift work. I understand you're upset, and you should be. I would be too. I have a proposal. Think about this. I said, let me bring my guys over for 2 hours and overlap your shifts for a while, so you can really teach them intensely. Give me 3 guys from your shift temporarily come over in our shift to supervise us and make sure we stop screwing all the stuff up that you have to fix. And they said, well, compared to doing what we're doing now, it's worth a try. So when I went back to school, high school, the end of that summer, second shift was up and working pretty well. So,
Sounds like a lot of tenacity and a lot of grit.
On the screen, you heard Sally talk about Sadie, my wife, and that's a picture of her there, and my 3 children. Sadie had gone to Villanova and gotten a master's in human resource development. So she came in at different points in the organization and helped us with our executive development, training, and team development, and so on, along with a lot of others. My 3 children had different interests. Steve always had a passion for health, environmental health and safety consulting, and he had a company that he started within our orbit that he ran, as well as his involvement on boards and so on of the companies. My other son, Greg, was involved in a number of operational positions in the company, and then he elected to start his own family business consulting effort that he ran for a number of years. My daughter, Suzanne, has always been active on boards and committees, and particularly active now in the High Foundation, which is, you will hear, playing a much bigger role in what we're going to be doing going forward. A little bit of about the High companies today. We're highly diverse and small in comparison to Hatfield, complex because of the diversity that we have. So we have about 2,000 employees in 12 businesses across 14 cities and 4 states. And so that's evolved over time, and different elements of these businesses grow or maintain at different points, because most of the businesses tend to be very cyclical, which is a big reason that we have the diversity. Because we have different drivers in our private businesses. Of course, the economy drives it. In our more public businesses, for example, the Interstate Highway Program drives the funding for bridges. So we have these different drivers with different factors that influence the businesses, and having the diversity actually helps us in that regard. I'm not going to take the time to go through all of them, but if you see on the chart, you see some of the nature of the companies. Of course, the original company, starting with High Steel, originally called High Welding Company. Then we began to do acquisitions. Starting one of the first ones we did was High Concrete Structures. And we said, well, look, these have some of the common elements. We have the engineering, we have the production, we have the field erection, similar to what we do in steel. So why can't we do that in concrete? And real estate began about that time as well. And then over the years, it morphed into the companies that you see in the list, including more heavily now in real estate, including most all asset classes, including hospitality, multifamily, commercial, industrial, and in multiple states and locations. So that actually, from a ownership, from an equity standpoint, is really the biggest part of our company today, bigger than the operating companies. And much of that, and we get into the structure and governance a little bit, you'll see is held by limited partnership interests that were driven down to G3, G4, and these are limited partnership interests in the real estate. And that's where actually the bulk of the equity is held in the real estate. You all have those entrepreneurial moments that you remember. There'll be kind of memorial days that'll probably stick in your mind forever. I just wanted to share one of those with you. In my case, I was really pushing for growth. We were out over our skis a few times, I knew that. But in this particular case, I really knew that. We for the first time, bid as a general contractor on a large public project. It was the series of bridges out over the whole of Baltimore Harbor. And that meant that we had to do all sorts of things we had never done before. We had to find out how to lease barges, how to get marine insurance. We had to buy a tugboat. We had to hire a tugboat captain. We had to understand what the ballast calculations were on your picks from the cranes on the barges. It was just a whole host of new things that we had never done before. But I figured if we're going to grow, so we had our best engineers look at it in 100 ways to be sure that we felt comfortable. So it's bid day. I'm sitting in Baltimore City chambers. Turns out there's 10 bids. I'm remembering that our bid is $46.5 million, which to me is more money than I've ever seen in my life, at that point in time. And so I'm really scared. This is going to either be really good or it's going to be really bad. So I'm there. Okay, I'm ready. I settle on my seat. They read the first bid, $76 million. And they're just like, we lost the company. I mean, I know my bid is $46.5 million. If this job is worth $76 million, I'm dead. Just totally dead. Well, ironically, as they read off the bids, each bid, and I never saw it like this, each bid was lower. Each bid, through the 10 bids. Now we're down to the last 2 bids. Ours, yet to be open, and the next one. I know now that the bid or be ahead of us is only 2% over where we are at this point. Now I've gone from being scared to death that we're going to lose the company because we're way out of our league to now one more bid to open, we're going to lose the job, by 1% because the next bid's going to come in lower than us. Turns out it came in, we got the job, and we made a lot of money on the job. It gave us a lot of confidence. But I'm sure all of you have those days that you will remember forever, totally ensconced in your memory. And so it's a little off the subject of governance, but I just among entrepreneurs, I just want you to know I feel those moments with you.
And they don't always turn out that way, right,
Not
Dale?
always
That's
turn
for
out.
sure. Well, you have tremendous drive and passion, as you're demonstrating here, and with deep roots. So tell us a little bit about the high philosophy and the values and culture that have guided your business practices over the years.
Well, early on, I was convinced that it's going to be important not only what we did, but who we are. And I worked with Chet Raber, who just passed away this year, as a consultant. And, you know, he really helped me kind of see a bigger world and realize what our place was in it. I sort of developed this saying after that, not from him, but just because of that exposure, by asking people, how big is your we? You know, for some people it's W-E-E, you know, for some it's spelled M-E. So how big is your we? And so I thought it was going to be important we create a culture and a philosophy that embraces, that allows for participation, that honors these things. So how are we going to get this, and how are we going to get it just not be my ideas or a few people's ideas? So we put drafts together and we sent them out to the co-workers and said, what do you think of this? This is what we're thinking. We're working on a philosophy. What's your feedback? Give us your edits. You know, we want it to be your philosophy. So we did that, and we got, you know, a couple hundred edits back, and we kept changing them, send them back out. What do you think now? Is this better? So our philosophy then really was developed in the 70s, and I have to say, you know, we keep looking at it. We haven't really changed it materially since that time. So it served us well as kind of the core about who we are, who we will be. We think that's every bit as important as what we do, who we are, what we do, how we do it. And so it served us well, I think. I think it's pretty much as relevant today as it was then, which is kind of amazing.
Well, and Dale, you have used advisors and non-family members really well over the years. So now we have a context for the family and for the business. So now let's get into governance. I am really intrigued with your governance model. You've worked very hard on it with lots of advisors over the years. It's uncommon and it's complex. So walk us through your early thinking and how the governance model has evolved to meet your needs and objectives.
Well, of course, our original entity was started by my father as a sole proprietorship, and it stayed that way until 1956, which was the first incorporation we had. And that first incorporation, you had to name some board members, right? Well, we had no intention at that time of having a board, so we just put some names down. And when I joined the company then, after graduating in 1963 with a degree in business administration, I realized there had never, ever been a meeting in the company, ever. Everything was on the hoof, on the floor, decisions were made, you know, on the floor as we go. So here I am now coming into the organization, the youngest brother of three. My father and two brothers had been there for 31 years before I came in the scene. And I realized there had to be a lot of change. So first thing I did was create a board of directors. And of course, initially that was just made up of family members. But it began to give some sense of governance and some place to focus and talk about issues. Nobody was thinking about working on the business. They were just thinking about working in the business. And so I felt we needed to back up and begin to think about how's this company going to be governed? How are we going to set strategies? How are we going to lay out plans? And I remember one of the first meetings, finally got the management group together to have a meeting, and the plant manager in the one company, we were going along, and I was trying to get the concept to them that this is a meeting, and that we're here to discuss bigger issues. Dale, I need C-clamps on the plant floor. I said, okay, John, I've heard you. No, I need a lot of them. I said, okay, we'll get you a lot of them. But now, why are we here? So that's kind of what I was coming from. There's the level of understanding of governance and the level of understanding of the roles of, the governing bodies, creating an executive team, creating the structures for the organization to hang on. So I sort of saw myself as the architect. How are we going to take this from what is to what will be? And when I joined the company in 1963, I had my controller go back. We were doing $1 million in sales, and we had done that pretty much consistently for quite a number of years. So it was a challenge. So now how do I address this, being a family member, being the youngest, trying to respect my older brothers that are in the system, and my father, all who had strengths and we needed to use, without usurping their authority. And so I worked on the idea, okay, well, we need to physically control all these functions. So, and I worked with some consultants on this, how do I do this? And came back, well, why don't you make your brother president, have your brother be the president, you be the executive vice president, have all the functional responsibilities report to you, including that function of fabrication that your brother currently runs, and then that will give you the ability to really move the organization around this and respect, the folks that are here. So that's kind of how we got launched into that level of governance and understanding how we work together. As we moved into some of the other businesses, in real estate, for example, actually that was kind of a fluke in strategy because we had bought a piece of land which we thought we were going to do a steel plant expansion on. Turned out, although we had clear title from the title company, the railroad came back and said, you don't have clear title over this siding, and so it was going to go into litigation, and we need to build plants, so we bought another piece of land. Now we had this piece available, had rail on it. Somebody came and said, would you build a warehouse for us with the rail siding? We need this, there aren't many rail sidings. So that was our great strategic decision to jump into real estate. And now, some years later, but that turned out to be a great spot for Cal and I to work together, my brother Cal, because he loved construction and he was good at it. And so I would do the front end of it, do the leasing and the design and get it all ready, prop it up, hand it to Cal. And I never had to worry about it after that because he'd do a great job. He could get it done on time and high quality and so on. So it's kind of how we work through the family dynamics of that. And we worked together for 40 years, that way, until he retired 26 years ago. So we formed the High Foundation back in 1980, and we were doing philanthropy in the community and did quite a bit over the years. But I say that because that becomes germane to what I'm going to tell you about the next iterations of the High organization. High Family Office we established in 2017. Officially, it's sort of been informally in place, but to create the staffing and a more formal family office, which then became a real major driver in what was to happen going forward. I had moved a lot of my stock over to my children. They never wanted to be in senior management, but they thought they would want to be in ownership. But when they got into ownership, they started to realize there was more required of them as owners than they thought. And with the complexity of the organization and so on, they said, we don't even want to be this. Of course, I had already moved the stock, so now what do you do? So, we sort of had a catharsis where about 2017, 18, I said, okay, I'll buy it all back. So that's what I did. So I was now sitting at considerably older in age, holding all the stock of the operating companies and all the general partnership shares and so on, real estate and hospitality and so okay. So what's succession from here? What's governance from here? How's this all going to work? I think the next charts show somewhat of what the new structure that we envision looks like. And you'll notice that you see the two main blocks being the high industries companies and the high industries, trying to read my own
And the High Foundation?
high foundation. So what we came up with, the idea was, we had sort of two choices at that point. I mean, as a family company, we looked at an ESOP in a cyclical business that's problematic for lots of other reasons as well. So we kind of ruled that out. Okay, now what are we down to? Well, we'd sell. That'd be the logical thing people would do at that point in time. I said, no, I don't want to sell. It's too good a legacy, too many good things going on here, too much integration and support in the community, and there's got to be another way. But wasn't a lot of ways popping up or where you go from here. So finally, I conceived of this notion. I said, look, next generations are well off. Everybody in the family is in good shape. How about if I just donate all my stock to the foundation? How would that be? And so that kind of gave rise to these charts that you see, which we have completed the transition to industries, and we expect to finalize the transition to real estate this year yet. So we have, that involved getting approvals from 43 lenders and quite a few franchisors, and we're through everything until one last lender pops up and says, oh no, I sold that loan. It's off, so I can't even make that decision. So that's delayed. We'll get there, it's just a matter, it's delayed. So in the first year, we did the industry stock transfers, and believe me, that involved rewriting all the documents, all the underlying board documents, committee charters, all the business arrangements, all the ways in which the functions would work among the entities. And so we're at the end of a sort of a 3-4 year path, which is feeling good that we're seeing the end. Getting to, and mindful of our time, next slide kind of goes back to your model. I've changed it a bit, but the shareholders now are not family. In that box, you'll see the High Holding Corporation. High Holding Corporation holds the voting stock of the companies. We cannot put voting stock into our private foundation under IRS rules because that's business interest. And so by creating a holding company and having it held there, a very small percentage, which is only about 4%, the 96% of the non-voting stock being transferred into the foundation. So when you look at that typical where you would see shareholders, you'd see family members. In this case, you see the two entities of High Holding and High Foundation. The board that we represent here in your mountain is really the High Companies Operating Board. The High Companies Operating Board has responsibility for all the high industries companies report up to it, and as do all the real estate entities that I had owned, not the limited partnership, but they control to the general partner. So those are the shareholders. The board is the operating company board, which stayed the same as it was when it was held privately. Of course, management has such a key role because we do not have family members in top management. It's all outside professional managers. And the family office plays a key role because it's this way in which we align all this. Each of the boards have an operating agreement with the High Family Office to serve them. In that role, they're able to really make sure everybody's on the same page and that we're aligned and we're all saying the same things and we're doing the same things. And because they have the tie to the holding company, we have the linkage where the holding company board president is also the head of our High Family Office. So that creates an alignment around the voting entity, the holding company, to drive that piece of it. So that takes us down to the next step then. It's not going to be a generational step. One of the reasons I helped or created the Family Business Center at E-Town was because I saw so many really great family businesses in Pennsylvania that were going to be transferring, and a lot of them weren't going to transfer. They were going to be sold because there were not people coming up in ownership or management. And when that happens, the acquirers from out of the area, large companies, they take the intellectual capital out, take it back to their corporate headquarters primarily. They take the donations out to the nonprofits in those areas and take it back to their corporate turf and put most of those contributions there. So I thought we need to preserve these family companies. And, you know, and you guys here and what we've done there, another 125 companies are working on this diligently. And never did I think I'd be here trying to figure out how in the world are we going to have succession. You know? So it's a different road. And what will be the impact? Well, the impact here, to give you some idea of what it will look like, these are just projections, but for example, in year end 22, we will have contributed from the foundation about $3,300,000 back to the community. But by the end of 26, we project it'll be $11,500,000 going back into the community. So it will make a significant difference in our community and our communities, because this includes anywhere where High has a presence, whether it's in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, or Springboro, Ohio, or wherever. But we sort of allocate that out based on the size of the footprint in these areas. So that's where we're headed. And
Well, and Dale, so you really, there's no one right way to do governance, by the way, but this is a really wholehearted, uncommon path that you have taken. Do you have any, we're going to have some time for questions, do you have any closing thoughts for us?
I guess if you could put it up there, I thought about Robert Frost's poem, you know, The Roads in the Wood. And, you know, I'm looking at what is my road. You know, it's certainly not the one most commonly taken. This is a very different approach. It's the road not taken. And so his words kind of resonate with me as we think about our direction and in our governance and our ownership and our place to be in their community. I have to say, though, I feel a great deal of personal satisfaction in putting together a governance and ownership structure that I am very hopeful and actually very confident can well go beyond my lifetime and continue to give back to the community. And really, it's a sense of pride, and I get it from our coworkers all the time. So proud to be able to give back, and we do a pretty good job of communication. Here's what you did because of the profits from the entity. Here's what you did in the community. Here's how you're making a difference. And for many people, that resonates with them. So, you know, I'm very optimistic about the High legacy going forward. It's a very different path. It's a different road. Time will tell. I'm just hopeful this will be as successful as I think it will in terms of a fairly unique approach to governance and ownership.
Thank you, Dale. It's really a stewardship move, very wholehearted. So we're going to take maybe one or two questions. We'll have time later for questions as well. But if you have a question, Mario, if you want to wait for the mic. Jen?
Thank you. Dale, how do you have the governance set up within your family office and your holding company in terms of the board that oversees those activities so that there's succession in those entities after you and your family members are gone? How do you have that set up?
And what we've done is make the holding company board self-perpetuating. We have pretty clear donor expectations and documents. We've been very careful at the selection of those folks for that holding company board. And we have put in place the succession for our family office. So we feel like those pieces have been pretty well planted. But you know, once you let go of the handle, it will go its own direction. We hope we've given it. We have guidelines. We have donor intent. We have KPMs that we communicate to the operating board and so on. So, like I said, and yeah, we're still in the place where we can make adjustments or changes yet as we go a bit, but some of it's locked in pretty well at this point. So.
Another question? I think we'd have time for one more. Jeff. Jeff from the Clemens Group.
What do you think your biggest struggle was from your generation to your children's generation as far as the way you did business and they want to do business?
Trying to think about that in different ways. I mean, I think, you know, part of a divide was that, of course, I had expectations and hopes that they would want to step up into the business and be as excited about it as I was. That wasn't to be, and so that was a learning for me to come to the realization that, you know, not everybody wants to do what you're doing. Yeah, and so that was a learning experience, and letting go of that, you know, and not trying to make something be that wasn't to be with that generation. And the second part of your question, would you remind me again?
Well, basically, do you think each generation has a different way of doing things?
Right.
They grew up at a different,
Right.
time frame, and they want to do things the way the business world is doing it now, and sometimes it's harder for the previous generation to accept that. Was there a struggle, with any one of your children that you could relate to?
I wouldn't say a struggle around that because they really never wanted to be in the leadership. So there wasn't a struggle over how we did it. They just didn't want to do it. So, that's a different element. But in observing now how my son runs his environmental and safety business, I would say, yes, there's some distinct differences there. I mean, we really worked hard to create a participative culture and so on, but he's probably more egalitarian even than I ever was. I mean, in terms of, I mean, ironically enough, the bottom line, and the bottom line was never my key driver, our key driver. That was a result of doing the right things. But he's even more like, I want to say, well, don't you need to make a profit at this? And he said, I am making profit, it's enough. So, in that sense, I would say somewhat different.
It's probably very much like you that he wants to make a difference as well, right? Yeah. Okay, well, thank you, Dale. We're going to shift over to Brad now, and then we'll have some questions, and we'll take a break and have more questions. So, Brad's aunt Becky is one of my best friends since age 6. We were next door neighbors, and I remember about 41 years ago when she said, she was so excited her nephew Bradford was born, and here he is 41 years later. So anyway, another thing, Brad just arrived yesterday, came back from Austin, Texas, right, where you received an award from U.S. Foods, Supplier of the Year? Second time in a row. Hear, hear. All right. Yeah. So, Brad, a very different story than Dale's. Tell us a little bit about yourself and then your journey into the business and your current role.
Happy to do so, and good morning, everybody, and welcome to Clemens. By the way, Clemens family members supporting the business, can you just stand up real quick?
Yes.
So these are, we're all cousins, some first, some second, some third, but Delene, Jeff, Drew, and Katie. So they're all here as well, and hopefully you can get to meet them in the breakouts. I'll start with my family. It's my wife, Andrea, and then our 2 boys, Nolan and Wyatt. It's a little dated, but gives you a sense. I grew up 2 miles from here in Talmenson Township and went to North Penn High School. and this would have been in the late 90s. You know my age now. And at the time, our business was going through what we call our transition from a family business to a business family. And that was a really hard time, a really, really hard time. We had been in business since 1895, so had just come off celebrating our 100-year anniversary. And I'll never forget coming home from high school one day and my dad telling me that he was asked to leave the business. High schooler, you find out your dad, your hero, asked to leave the business. And so, that was the start of our transition from a family business to a business family. And one thing about businesses and family, like you said, it's good and it's challenging all at the same time. But, we like to say in the family, when you're green, you grow, and when you're ripe, you rot. And so we have to constantly be looking to be better and how to become better versions of ourselves. And so at the time, my cousin Katie was the oldest in our family, and she was heading off to college, and that was the expectation. Hey, we're all family members. You need to do well. We've been given a gift. Many of the family were shareholders, and you'll see a little bit more here, but we're very blessed and been set up extremely well in life. And so expectations were high that we needed to succeed in life and achieve for ourselves, but do it the right way. And so I went off to college. I went to Bucknell University because it was the best school I could get into. And you know what? I'm proud to this day that that's where I went to college. Just stepping back a little bit, the fourth gen, our parents, some of them went to college. It was actually the women that actually finished college. Most of the men, they went to college and then they never graduated because they got pulled back into the business. Well, our generation, you know what? You're going to go to college and you're going to do well and you're going to get a job. And you know what? That job might be in the business, but it's probably not going to be in the business. We actually have a rule in the family. If you want a job in the business, working on the line, you can have a job. But if you want a career, well, you need to go work outside the business for at least, at the time, 3 years. And so that's what I did. I went to law school at Villanova. I ended up practicing law as an attorney, and for 4 years was there, and then ultimately came back into the business, and here I am today. Maybe I'll pause there for a minute.
Okay, do you want to talk later about your current role?
Let's get there. And I'm just going to weave a little of the business into the governance, if that's okay. So here we are today. We're Clemens Food Group. A lot of people in the community know us as Hatfield, and they associate us with the Phillies and Hatfield hot dogs. And of course, yes, that's a big public piece of who we are. Believe it or not, hot dogs are less than 1% of our business today. We're a food and agribusiness company, and I'll show you a little bit more about the business. So we're a vertically coordinated pork production company. We're in agriculture and in food. We're the 5th largest pork company in the United States, but we're also one of the largest hog farmers in the United States. We grow millions of pigs a year to support our operations. We're the largest pig farmers in the Commonwealth. We're also in feed milling, so we produce the feed for the pigs. So feed milling, hog farming, pork processing, and then distribution to our customers. We do about $2 billion in sales. In the late 90s, early 2000s, when we were a family business, we were around $300 million in sales. So we've sextupled the business just over the last 20 years. And it's all been growth in pork. We do have real estate similar to Dale. We kind of fell into real estate in a similar fashion, like many family businesses do. You'll end up having real estate assets, and then what are you going to do with them? If you look all around as you come in, many of the assets are part of our real estate portfolio. The Wawa as you came in, Freddy's, Chick-fil-A. We've developed much of the land around our assets, but we also have fractional interests and private equity funds that are into real estate, for example. A little bit about the history. So this is great-great-grandpa and his second wife, I think. His first wife. Thank you, Jeff. The family is very large. There's over 800 family members, nearly 400 shareholders. So our complexity starts there. We not only have we have branches and twigs of the family, and we'll get into that a little bit later. I'm part of the 5th generation, as are the others you saw. Doug Clemens was our 4th generation chairman and CEO that just retired last year. You can see him there on the right. And then many people in the industry know Phil Clemens. Phil would have been our longtime 3rd generation CEO and chairman that retired probably 10 years ago. It's all about the team. All about the team. We have nearly 5,000 team members across the country. As your businesses grow, your role as owner, leader, it's going to change. It will, as your businesses grow. And it'll become all about the team from the ground up. And as a result, as many have, we've embodied the servant leadership mindset, because that's our role here as leaders, is to support our team. Values. One of the things when we went through our family business to business family transition was really documenting those values. So first of all, we're a Christian company. It's in our mission statement, and that's something that we're proud of. And when we talk about things that will change and will not change, that's something that'll never change. The other thing that will never change is our core values. This is something that 3rd gen was instrumental in developing, that we'll carry forward. And our core values are up here. You can see them. They're ethics, integrity, and stewardship. We've had to work a lot on boiling things down, as I'm sure many of you have as well. But ethics means I'll do the right thing. Integrity, I'll do what I say I'm going to do. And then stewardship, I'll build a foundation for the future. And so these are our core values in the business. They're core values of our family. And it's in our view, a critical step in the process for anybody as you advance your family business. I talked about vertical coordination. We're actually building a feed mill right now in central Pennsylvania, a little south of Williamsport, near Lewisburg, my town of my alma mater. Talked about hogs, talked about food production, and then transportation. If you see our trucks on the road with the Hatfield brand, that's our PV Transport division. We don't do all of our own trucking, but we do quite a bit across the United States. Talked about the feed mill. I'll try to go to some of the family business stuff. Picture of locations of our hog farms, where they are. We're a crate-free system. So one of the things as your business develops, you're always trying to think about what's next. Being in hog production, we care a lot about how our animals are raised. But we're always looking to how to do it better. And so we've converted all of our hog production to be what's called crate-free, which you can see pictures of there on the right. And that's how we treat the sows, the mother pigs, and then also all of their offspring. Most of the industry is actually still crated. You can kind of see it in the left there where the mother pigs are not able to get up and turn around. So that's an example of something where we've had to be very progressive in our industry as we think about what we think is the right thing to do, and we know our customers value too. You're here. This is a facility we have in Coldwater, Michigan, very significant fresh operation, and this is our smoked meats facility, which hopefully you got to see a little bit into today. Talked about PV Transport. These are our brands, customers. We're international. We ship across the world. Mexico, Hong Kong, Japan, China, the Philippines, Latin America. Most of our sales are here in the United States, with many customers that you probably would recognize. Talked about the Phillies, but we do a ton of business with Cisco. Cisco is the largest food service distributor in the country. They're a Fortune 100 company, and we would be their primary pork supplier in many categories. Anybody ever eat Baconator at Wendy's? We put the bacon on the Baconator at Wendy's. If anybody ever goes to Jersey Mike's, has a sandwich with pork on it, we make all the ham and bacon for Jersey Mike's. If you eat a can of Campbell's soup, ham and pea, well, that's the ham being diced right here in that first production line you saw on the left. And then I'll just call out, we talked about U.S. Foods. Another one that would probably be good would be McDonald's. We supply millions and millions of pounds of raw material that go into McDonald's pork products. So that's a little bit about our business. Let's we'll shift
Yes.
shift to family
So
business.
let's
Yeah.
shift here, and it's a very different scenario than Dale. So where do you want to start? How about we start with the family?
Yeah, we can start with the family. So very large, 840, and so that makes our governance extremely complex, extremely challenging. We have many family that, as you'll see from the shareholder number, they're not shareholders. And that actually goes back decades when the men got the stock and the women didn't. And so you go to the second generation, and a lot of them are working in the business, but the men got the stock and the women didn't. And so here we are, 125 years later, and that's something we're still dealing with. Many of the G2 branches have gotten stock, but probably not nearly as much as the men did. And so that's a dynamic that we have to manage.
Which is pretty common, back in those
Yep.
times.
Yep. We talk a lot about what hat you're wearing. We can be a family member and wear that hat. But you know what? You might also be a shareholder, and then you're wearing a different hat versus management wearing a third hat. And so if you've heard the hat analogy in family business, I think that's really important. I would encourage you to continue to use that because you have to be very aware of what hat you're wearing, especially if you're in an executive role dealing with challenges.
So let's talk a little bit about the Blue Mountain. You have 20 G4 and G5s, 20
Yep.
from the fourth and fifth generation out of about 4,800.
Yep.
And talk about just how you got into your role. I mean, from being
Sure.
a lawyer, a
Yep.
blank room.
Yeah, so we have a rule that if there's an open role, family members got to apply. And when you apply, you've got to be qualified. And if there's somebody who's more qualified, they get the job. If you're equally qualified, well, then the family member role is the hat's the tiebreaker. So I remember in 2011, the company was interviewing for a food safety and regulatory quality manager role. I had a legal background, some management experience, but so I had to interview, and I beat the other people I was interviewing, and so that's how I got the job. Now, if somebody believed in me, they saw my potential, thought that I could do it.
You were pursued.
I would say I was pursued,
Pursued.
yes. But you know what? It was my choice at the same time. I was getting to a point in my career where I was ready to make a change, and so I interviewed, went through the process, and got the job. And so I worked in frontline leadership for 4 years. I led our product development team for 3 years. I led our sales and marketing team for 3.5 years after that, and took the president role about 2 years ago. So been very blessed to come up through the business, have great mentors, family and non-family. Essentially, we're a professionally run organization at this point. The family still runs the company, but we do it through a couple of different avenues. The shareholders, all of our voting shares are held in voting trusts, and those voting trusts each have a voting trustee, 4 voting trustees, and those trustees elect the board, and that's their primary role, to elect the board. We have a majority independent board. It's been that way since we made the family business to business family transition. It's a fiduciary board. These are highly qualified professionals who are paid market for the role that they play. And their role is to elect the CEO, be a credible challenge on strategy, plans, culture. They weigh in on succession planning, on the rest of the management team, and they're really there to help us succeed, to help the family succeed, but also help management succeed.
So you have 2 family directors and 5 independents.
That's right.
That's correct.
Yep. And that's something we've debated over the years, but in general, it's been about 2 since we made the transition from family business to business family. We think it's important that you not only have the family electing the trustees, but then there's also family representation on the board. And then what we do is we allow one trustee to sit in on each board meeting. We utilize the fairly standard 4 board meetings a year for our governance structure. And then those trustees are sitting in really to observe the effectiveness of the board versus weighing in on issues.
So we're going to, before we move to the next slide, which talks more about the shareholder function, talk a little bit about how you build shareholder muscle. I know you recently made some changes.
We will do that, and the experts are not me, it's the folks you saw stand up. But so as your business grows and the shareholder base grows, it gets really, really hard to keep your shareholders engaged. So I'm one of four. I have three sisters. We all grew up in Towmenson. One lives in Orlando, Florida. One lives in Hollywood, California, and one lives in San Francisco. So they're gone. They're not here. And so their connection to the business is through their brother or listening into shareholder calls. So we have shareholder calls once a month where our CEO records a video and provides an update to them. We have a shareholder connections team, some of the folks you saw stand up, that are sending out weekly newsletters. We have monthly financial statements that are going out. We have 2 or 3 times a year, we call them business meetings / shareholder meetings. You have your annual shareholders meeting, but we've found as our company's grown that it almost becomes more of a family reunion than it does, an actual business meeting. So we've had to be very intentional about shareholder engagement, and it's a challenge. It is, and you'll see it as your families grow, as people spread out geographically, and you're going to get to a point where some people don't want to stay,
And they can leave,
and
right?
they can leave.
Have
Yes.
redemption.
Yep, and we have that, and it's important to have that. We like to call it an exit ramp. You should have an exit ramp for family members that don't want to stay, and things change. Could be they just want their money. Could be they don't align with the mission and vision and values of the business anymore. It could be you want them out. It could be a myriad reasons why it's just not a match anymore, and that's okay. That's okay. And so absolutely the importance of that, and had 2 just exit this year. So it happens. It definitely does.
Voice and choice, very important, right in a family business.
It is. I will say one more thing about that. So if you haven't read the book, it's a very good book. The Family Business Handbook, the Banyan Group, they've done a lot of work recently on this stuff, and they talk about the growth, liquidity, and control framework. It's a great framework for understanding your owner's vision. So what we did was we took that framework and we made a survey, and we sent the we educated on it, and then we surveyed all of the shareholders. Dale mentioned the word alignment. You cannot assume alignment. You cannot do that. You have to verify alignment. Are the shareholders still aligned to your vision for the company, to your owner's vision? And so that's what we did. We surveyed the shareholders utilizing that framework, and you know what? We found out 90% were aligned. But you know what? In 388 shareholders, that 10% still weren't. Well, that's almost 40 people. That's a lot. Now, you don't do anything by majority rule in life, really. But you know what? Having 40, that's not insignificant. And so we were able to utilize that framework to drive discussion and engagement with shareholders on what they were aligned on and what they weren't aligned on.
It's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Actually, let's go to the next slide and talk a little bbit more about how this whole shareholder function works, and then we'll...
Okay, sure. Okay, yeah, so I talked about the 4 branches, and that was G2. Okay, so I think somebody might have said 11. So 7 of the 11 did not get stock at the time. And so the 4 that did, brothers, they got equity, and that equity is what's held in our voting common trusts. The vast majority of the equity and wealth is actually not in voting stock. It's in non-voting stock. We have a tremendous amount of non-voting stock. That's where most of those 388 shareholders have their equity. We also have a whole series of preferred stock that we could talk about for a while, but I'm just going to put that to the side for the moment. At least within the voting structure, those voting trusts utilize another layer called family unit representatives. The family unit representatives are actually who represent the branches and who then in turn elect the voting trustees who elect the board. So it's a way for us to give a voice to the voting shareholders into governance, but you can see how it also complicates things for us because there's only 11 of them. So there's 11 family unit representatives electing 4 trustees who ultimately elect the board. That leaves the vast, vast, vast majority of ownership really without a vote on much, right? Maybe a sale of the company, a significant merger, a new class of equity. And so we absolutely have had to work very hard on giving shareholders a voice, even though they might not have a vote. Yep.
Well, and some of you may remember we've had John Reininger, who was their chief relationship officer for a number of years,
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe 8 years ago. You've changed that structure. Talk a little bit about
We have, and so we had a full-time chief relationship officer role. I was a 4th-gen family member. Today we actually have 2 5th-generation family members, Delene and Katie. That's a job share. 2 women who have lives outside of work.
Wave or stand
Yep,
so we
please
can
say.
see you.
Yep. Hello.
By the way,
Yep.
Delene provided all of these flowers from
She
her
did.
garden.
Yep. But in all seriousness, that's a structure that works better for us. They're also younger and able to connect with where we think our biggest opportunity for engagement is, which is in the 5th and 6th gen. Yep.
And so they are the shareholder coordinator managers?
Yeah.
That's kind
Yeah.
of the...
Shareholder
and the
managers, yeah.
Shareholder
Yeah.
managers,
Yeah.
got it.
So let's see. This just a couple more pictures, and then maybe we go to Q&A. This is a portion of the family that was here for the grand opening of this facility last year. Several vendors in the room today, by the way, who helped build this plant, and so I want to say thank you to those who are here. Yep. I think Clady Landis as well. So thank you to those who are here in your work to make this possible. We just had our annual shareholders meeting. So one of the things, you typically do it at a country club, or we've typically done it at a country club. It's probably time to change it up. And so this year, Katie and Delene and the team, they actually held it here. So we have primary care on site here at Hatfield. It's an excellent service that we provide our team members. So we have a full-time doctor, nurse, we have a gym, we have a yoga studio, weights, cardio. In the gym, they turned the whole gym into our shareholders meeting, and then they brought in some food trucks afterwards where folks were able to socialize and reconnect. You started with the importance of the family, 100%. The family connection is the foundation, but you can't take it for granted. The bigger your family gets, the harder it is. And so creating spaces for the family to reconnect is critical for the longevity of the business. Yep. There's a picture of Katie and Delene. Picture of some of that G6, checking out our the family gym night. So you got to get creative, creative in how you engage that next gen. We actually have another team that Jeff leads. That's it used to be called our Clemens Family Owners Board, but that's, what's the new name, Jeff? Clemens Connection Council, thank you. I think we're on our, we're on our 3rd or 4th iteration of structure of our owners engagement group, and Jeff is helping us with that as well as Drew. We talked about, Dale talked a little about giving back to the community. So we do not have a foundation. We do not. We have a lot of people that want to decide how they give their own money. And so we do redemptions. We have a donors advised fund structure where our shareholders are able to redeem shares into the DAF, and then the DAF redeems the shares into cash for those nonprofits. It's a structure that's worked well with us. We're so large. We've had trouble aligning historically on who we want to give to and for what reason. This structure gives us a little bit more flexibility. Yeah.
Is that?
Okay.
So before we go to a break,
Yep.
Thank you, Brad. And as you
Yep.
could hear, there's a lot of editing and adapting.
Thank you.
And also to the cousins who are here, we even have 1 or 2 first-round draft picks, right? Drew,
do,
you're
yes.
married in? He
Yes.
said they get called outlaws. I said, no,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah.
First-round draft pick. And Jeff? Yeah. So, a few questions. I think we have time for 2 before we break, if there are any quick ones. If not, we will break and have questions later. Anybody dying to ask a question? Ron?
So you have a lot of shareholders. How do you manage their expectations of income from the corporation versus growth and keeping the business going? With all the people involved.
In general, we've had to align on that, right? And so the thing that we've aligned on is that the needs of the business come first. The needs of the business come first, followed by needs of the shareholders, followed by needs of individual shareholders. And so needs of the business come first, which means large capital projects come first, reinvesting back in the business comes first, business diversification comes first, and then what's left is for the family. And so a couple things come to mind. So one, we have a lot of family members that their retirement was the equity in this company. And so when we went from a family business to a business family, we converted a lot of our non-voting common to preferred. And so have many shareholders, third-gen shareholders, and now fourth and even a couple fifth, that they're getting preferred dividends at a pretty significant rate. We give about $30 million a year back to stockholders through dividends and redemptions. And we think it's a pretty good program. Between non-voting common dividends, we also allow non-voting common redemptions for a series of reasons. Number one, education. We've aligned as a family that education is really important. And so if you want to redeem stock for education, that could be college, PhD, JD, MBA, you name it, you can sell stock to be able to pay for your schooling, for tuition, for board, for your college, your schooling experience. Number two is housing. We believe as a family in housing and the importance of housing for the establishment of a family and the longevity of a family. And so we allow all shareholders to sell up to $400,000 a year in stock for housing, one time. The other thing we believe is in this charity, and so mentioned the ability to give back for charity. And then also, we also believe in supporting those as they approach retirement, which is why we've come up with the series of preferred to be able to support those approaching retirement. We do allow year-end distributions based on profitability. Some years that's been 0. Some years it's been 70,000. And so that gives management discretion in how much the redemption can be based on profitability. Yep. As the family grows, liquidity becomes a challenge. And you'll see in the book that growth liquidity control framework, and they say it, and I think it's true, they all can't come first. You've got to choose. Just like in business, it's all about trade-offs. In shareholder strategy, it's the same thing. You typically have to prioritize one. And so we prioritize growth as a family, actually followed by liquidity and then control. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
We're going to take a break. Thank you very much. Let's be back by 10 o'clock. And then we're going to move from just listening, we'll ask some questions, but also reflecting and discussing around the tables. Thank you.